Welcome to Explain It to a Comedian. I'm comedian Dhaya Lakshminarayanan.
And I'm Sammy Obeid.
And I'm Laura Veldkamp.
Well, thanks for joining us, Laura. So tell us, what do you do?
I'm a professor of finance and economics at Columbia Business School.
And what kind of business do you specialize in?
The data economy.
The data economy, not to be confused with dating economy.
Definitely not. Although you could use data to go date and choose your dates. I'm not sure I'd recommend it, though.
I'm pretty sure it's illegal, but I've tried it.
You have? How did that work?
Not well. You end up knowing too much.
What is the data economy?
The data economy is where firms gather data, like what did you buy, what did you say, what did you do, where did you go, and then they use it to try to design products or sell you things.
Is it like having a friend who's a great gossip?
I guess so, because the data might reveal some things that not many people know about you.
It's like having a friend who's great at gossip, but that friend's always trying to make money off of you.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a great friend, would it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Do you think that the data economy is important?
Oh, absolutely. The most valuable firms in the world today, the Apples and Amazons of the world, they have lovely buildings that are shiny. They surely have great workers that are highly skilled, but they're valued mostly because of their data, right? So we've got these incredibly valuable assets in the world, and they're mostly valued for their data, but we don't really know yet good ways of valuing that data. That's a problem.
So it's not baked into, say, their stock price or in terms of what they're sharing with their shareholders?
Sure, the stock price should reflect the value of their data to the extent that people who buy the stock know what that value is. But if they're just guessing, too, then their guesses get reflected in the stock price. And so the stock price is a guess of what that data value is, but it's not the truth.
Is there a company or are there companies who you would say are very public about revealing the quality and quantity of data that they have?
No.
So basically everybody who has data isn't telling us much about the data that they have.
They mostly want to keep it secret because they don't want you to think too much about the data. You know, if somebody were snooping on you all the time and following you, you might do things a little differently. You might be a little self-conscious. You might not act as naturally, sort of like being recorded right now. But if you were unaware that maybe somebody was watching you and recording everything you do, you might behave a little differently, more naturally, and they'd get better data.
So they don't want to get, they don't want to get data that doesn't represent us well because we're nervous.
We're nervous or we're self-conscious. Maybe we don't do some things we might be embarrassed of.
That's true. When I have anxiety, I lie about my name, my birthday.
Oh, really? What's your anxiety name?
David.
Oh, I like that. I'm Goliath. What can you do with this amassed data? Like, what are people doing with it? Besides spying and shaming people into changing their behavior, what can you do with this data?
Well, firms mostly use it to be much more productive. So if you have a warehouse and that warehouse has limited capacity, you'd want to know what to stock in that warehouse, what's going to sell, not in 3 weeks, but tomorrow. Right? So Amazon has a warehouse in New York City, and they want to know exactly how many rolls of toilet paper they ought to have for the next 48 hours, and data can help them do that. And if they stock exactly the right amount, they'll make the maximum amount of profit, and when I click, it'll be on my doorstep right there in 2 hours. So firms use data to do a lot of things that are really helpful for consumers.
If you had to guess, what company has the most data?
Google.
Oh, yes.
They see our fears, our desires. We type it all into Google and search away.
In the olden days, the Greeks had a lot of gods, and we're slowly getting down to 1 to 10 now. In the future, will God be data because it's all-knowing and all-seeing, and it can change your behavior?
But I won't worship it.
Really? But doesn't Google kind of worship data? I mean, that's why they're such a great performing public company. Isn't Eric Schmidt kind of bowing at the altar of data?
I have to think about it. Data is a be-all and end-all, as a value in itself. Seems like there are going to be some deeper differences, but really I'm not a philosopher, so Yeah, I think it's above my pay grade.
Well, what is DSGE?
A dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model.
Okay, that might be in your pay grade. Can you tell me about that?
Okay, so dynamic means that it happens over time. Stochastic means that random stuff happens. We don't know exactly what will happen tomorrow. And general equilibrium means that we think about what causes prices to go up and down.
So why did you study that, and why is that important to your work?
A lot of what's important about the data economy is what I'll be able to do with data tomorrow. I might do a lot of things today. I might experiment with some new product, stock some new brand of toilet paper in the warehouse in order to learn how much people like it and how much they'll buy it. And that knowledge will be valuable tomorrow. So you really want to think about the dynamics. But it's got to be stochastic. It's got to be random, because data is about prediction. Data is a tool for predicting something that will happen that's uncertain. And the general equilibrium part is important because we want to talk about prices and where they come from.
Very important follow-up. You've talked about toilet paper a couple of times. How do you choose the brand that you have in your home?
I go with the cheapest one. My roots are Dutch.
Really? My parents are immigrants. I admire a thrifty sensibility. What about, so you value, but comfort, that's not an option.
Yeah, it's got to have some degree of comfort, but I don't know. I live in a household with boys. There's nothing comfortable or neat about that anyway, so who cares?
How might a big company use data to select the optimal toilet paper for their employees?
Well, you could stock different stalls with different brands of toilet paper, and then you could see if some of those stalls get used more than others.
But you would have to control for variables like which stall is the closest to the door in case someone's in an emergency.
That's true. You might want to switch the variety of toilet paper each day and make sure the toilet paper gets randomly assigned to a different stall. And, then you'd have to do a diff and diff. That's a fancy economist way of...
Ooh, what's a diff and diff?
We look at the difference between brands of toilet paper, and then we'd look at the difference in the usage of the first stall versus the second stall, say. And once we account for both those differences, we'd have a clean estimate of what brand of toilet paper is preferred.
Clean estimate is what we're going for with toilet paper in any stall.
Absolutely.
So just going back to the general theme of the data economy, do you said that these companies are very secretive about the data they have. They don't want you to know what they're gathering. Do you see data being more so abused in the future or used for good?
I think both. Like we'll see some abuse of data, and we'll see lots of data being used for good. I think the abuses will probably decline because I think we're becoming more aware, we're becoming more savvy about how our data is being used, we're becoming a little bit more careful about which boxes we check. I think that will help to make customers more responsible about the ways in which they share the data and force firms to be more responsible in the ways in which they use it.
Can any information about a person be considered data?
Anything that could be digitized.
Digitized in that you can type it out?
Yeah.
So for instance, I run an online comedy club. It's a thing. Where people tune in and they watch a comedian perform virtually and they laugh when something's funny.
Do they? How do you know?
They do. Well, you can hear it, but also we record it and we can input it into any kind of software to see the sound waves of people's laughter and when they occur, after which jokes, the timing, and how long they last, the depth, the strength of the laugh. There's a lot of data that goes into laughter. Trust me, I hear it a lot. Do you think if I gather enough data on how much people laugh and when they laugh, that I could potentially sell it to China?
To China? I don't know. I'm not sure whether they're trying to make people laugh. They may have other objectives, but you could sell it to somebody.
There are Chinese comedians.
Really?
The best ones are in jail right now, but there are Chinese comedians.
That sounds frightening. surely there are people who'd like to be funnier and like to know how to make their jokes succeed. And so they could use that data to figure out what kind of jokes would appeal to which audiences.
So the data is valuable, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. You could be rich. You could be sitting on a gold mine.
Now, I agree. Now, that's what my comedy club is called, actually, the Gold Mine.
Oh, I thought you were sitting on a gold mine right now.
This chair is made of gold. It's bought with laughter money. So let's say I collect all of that data. Who would I approach to sell it to? Like, how would I package it? How would I go out there and be like, hey, Google, hey, Facebook, I've got some data for you.
Could you put it on eBay?
Can you just be an independent startup in the data economy?
I suppose so. You'd have some data crafted, honed jokes. You tell me your audience and some things about them, and I'll tell you which jokes will predictably work to generate some laughs.
Artisan data. You're not a big company. Handcrafted data. Small business.
Is there an app that like I can get on, like where, you know, like Fiverr, but for data, like Dater?
Yeah.
I suppose you could do that. I don't know how effective it will be. Trying to predict jokes sounds like a little bit of a dry way to go about it, but it might work.
Dater also sounds like an app that Sammy can use to gather data on people before going on dates.
Yes.
That's a great app for Sammy.
That sounds very creepy.
That's what they say.
Yeah, well, Sammy is...
I call it efficient.
This economy is turning into a data economy, but you have a term for it, datanomics. What does that mean?
Datanomics involves a lot of things. Datanomics is when you pay for something and part with your data. So in Sammy's case, if he wants to get people to show up at his comedy club, and so he does comedy for free so that he can record what people laugh at, well, they're paying for his comedy, but not with dollars and not with euros, but with data, right? They're showing up and generating some data for him. So there's a transaction going on there. We exchanged comedy for data. It may not be a good deal. Maybe the data that Sammy gets is worth a lot more than his jokes, but you know, there's still a transaction going on. Not everyone is a good deal.
So let's say instead of selling my data on laughter, I wanted to make it bigger and become like the Google of comedy. How would I go about doing that?
You'd have to acquire some data from some other firms or grow your firm. You'd have to either tell a lot of jokes yourself or acquire, merge with other comedians and get their data. And then the more data you had, if it helped your jokes to be better, the more you'd get invited to comedy clubs to go tell more jokes. And more jokes creates more data, and you'd grow your data empire.
So you're saying I would be invited to more comedy clubs if I stole material from more comedians?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
Well, you could also give them a discount and take it.
Yeah, if you sold cheaper tickets to your comedy clubs, you might get some more people to show up.
Can't get any cheaper than free.
You could pay them.
Good point.
So data seems to be very valuable. And right now, people signal their financial success with cars, jewelry, fashion. In the future, will people just be wearing their data to show how valuable they are? And if so, what are some outfits that you think would show people that they got a lot of data and they're valuable?
How big's your flash drive? I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. So how would you have to have a big flash drive, or is it like because of Moore's law, it would be like really tiny and that would show that you have a lot of data on a little instrument?
Are we still talking about data?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I think you need a powerful flash drive.
Oh, powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not the size, it's the power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the prediction power.
Well, I see you've been specializing data for quite some time now. What do you predict is the future of the data economy? Obviously, you said that, you know, hopefully it can be used for some good. There will be some abuse. Do you foresee any regulation? Do you foresee big changes? Any monopolies coming in data?
Yeah.
Or will it become more of a distributed market where we all have access to some data?
So it's likely that we're going to see bigger firms now than we did in the past. Data lends itself to monopolies because you can use data to manage the decisions of a small firm, but you can also use the same amount of data to manage the decisions of a really big firm and get more value out of it that way, right? If I take two firms, each of which was pretty productive, and I put them together, they now have twice as much data, so they can make better decisions. Both halves of that new firm can make better decisions than before. So we've made a more efficient firm by combining the underlying firms. So data allows big firms to be more efficient, and big firms generate more data, right? They do more transactions, they snoop more on their customers and have more customers to snoop on and learn from. And so there's this natural force that makes firms bigger than they were before. But that can be dangerous because those big firms then have a lot of power over us.
So then the more revealing and personal information I give Google or Facebook, that might actually be a good thing.
Yeah, actually, I think most people would prefer for firms to know a good bit about them. If they don't, they advertise the wrong goods to you, and you try to go shopping, and all the things that come up on top are things that you don't want, like fancy brands of toilet paper you wouldn't use, or some caviar that you don't really want to eat, and you were looking for something quite different, and it can be very frustrating actually to browse in a way that firms have no knowledge of your past history.
So it's more important, it actually could really benefit our global economy for people just to be more honest and vulnerable. Like, here's my data, I have nothing to hide, take it.
Yes and no. So it certainly increases efficiency, but then other people are worried about manipulation. If somebody knows a lot about you, then maybe they know exactly how to trigger you, how to get you to do something that maybe you really didn't want to do, but you do on an impulse.
I'm in a relationship, I know.
Your girlfriend has gathered data on you and knows how to trigger you?
She knows how to get it out of me. Yeah.
What about this data that can be used to discriminate against people in terms of their health or in terms of who they are? What will happen to this kind of data, and what will happen to people in the future if the wrong people get their hands on it?
So data comes from our past interactions, and if as human beings we have discriminated in the past, then data learns from that and it does what we do. And so if you're collecting data and traditionally, say, people with darker skin haven't gotten home loans, then that's in the data, and then you try to use that data to predict who should be getting home loans, and it's going to reflect the discrimination that we've already committed. That's dangerous.
I'm American. We're in Europe right now. We call him Santa, but here he's Father Christmas. Apparently he knows when you're naughty. He knows when you're nice. What kind of data is Father Christmas collecting? And how would he have access to this data? And what kind of decisions is he making about gifts or coal with this data?
Well, I can answer that. I believe he has informants. Is this correct? Do all these data companies have such informants?
So, Sinterklaas, the Father Christmas in the Netherlands, seems to know even more than Google does about what kids do. I think the parents might be the informants, but yeah.
So what are informants? We're our own informants, right? We're making these decisions and giving data away. Are there other ways of collecting this data?
Yes. So our neighbors give a lot of our data away.
Oh, no.
They do. They tell on us. Most of us live in neighborhoods where we share some similarities with our neighbors. And so if I'm not that different from the other women who live near me, who browse on a similar computer at a similar time of day with a similar IP address or zip code, then when they do stuff, they reveal data about people who share these characteristics, and firms find out something that's probably pretty relevant about what I'll do too.
We talked a little bit about why apps are free. Why is firm size diverging? And how come in the non-digital economy, activity might be greater than what GDP suggests?
So when we measure GDP, we measure the quantity times the price. So in Sammy's Comedy Club, the quantity would be the number of people who showed up and got tickets, and then we'd multiply that by the price of each ticket. So if he sells tickets to his comedy club for 20 bucks a pop and 100 people show up, well, then we've got $2,000 worth of GDP. But if he gives those tickets away for free because he really wants people to come into the club to record their laughter, we've got 100 tickets times the price of 0. So it doesn't show up in GDP. So it's as if nothing valuable happened at that club. But maybe everybody had a good time. Maybe it was valuable. Maybe we ought to count that in GDP. That's a service, right? But it's not going to get weighted at all because the price was 0. So we need to rethink how we weight transactions, how we weight services like comedy or goods like a cup, if some of the price is being paid for with data.
So GDP also stands for good data, please?
It should, yeah. It's not counting the good data, please, right now. It's just counting the gross domestic product.
That's gross. Here's a question that everybody has. Are our phones listening to us?
Of course. They better be, because they're supposed to transmit that sound onto somebody else.
Well, even when, yes, but even when they're not turned on with the point for us speaking into them, our phone's just sitting there idly, can they hear us? Because me and a lot of my friends have noticed that we might talk about a product, and then later when we're on Google, it shows it up like as an ad, or on Facebook, it comes up as an ad. So are our phones listening to the words that we say and using that as data?
Probably not unless you've set them up as a smart speaker that you're supposed to talk to. But I think you do enough on your phones that your phones can guess what you've probably talked about and then advertise that stuff to you.
What if your phone is in the proximity of someone else's phone? Are they able to communicate with each other and exchange data?
Not usually, but the company might know that those two phones were in a similar location and might then use the data they've gathered on your friend who sat their phone next to yours and say, well, if you guys are friends, you're probably pretty similar. So maybe what your friend does is now reflected onto you.
Oh, that's bad news.
You got to choose your friends carefully.
And your neighbors.
And your neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could reveal all your secrets. Or you could look bad because of what your neighbors have done.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
In America, all of us have bad neighbors, so I think it's reflective of the whole country.
America is a bad neighbor.
Totally, yeah. Canada is like, please stop telling Google that we're similar.
We're very
really
loud.
not.
We stay up late.
Yeah. You mentioned that this data is not being stolen. It's being paid for. It's being given freely. So this is not a theft economy. This is happening because there's money involved. How can people buy back their data? Or is that just not possible now?
Oh, I didn't say you could return the good. So you give data to a company when you buy something from them, but the company tends to give you discounts in return. And you may not be, sometimes you're aware of those. If you go to the supermarket, you may give them your data, like your phone number or your customer loyalty number, and you'll see the discounts ring up at the bottom of the screen when you check out. But other times it's not so visible, but it should be there because if the company wants your data, they really want to sell you something. And if they really want to sell you something and they want to outcompete other people who might sell you something similar, the way to do that is to lower the price. And so in the process of trying to get more transactions, because they value your data, they should be lowering their price, and that is a discount. It might not be explicit, but it's a discount that you're getting in exchange for your data. Now the question is, could I return the data and get the discounts back? I've never seen that kind of program.
Wow. So we've given it up and we can't get it back.
Yeah, it's a non-returnable good.
I've returned things at the grocery store before, like a half-eaten bag of flour. You don't think in the future that people will be a little lax on returning half-used data?
No, I've never returned a half-eaten bag of flour. That sounds awful.
I tried to make cookies, and I told them that the cookies, when they came out, I just didn't like the vibe that they were giving off. And so he said, I feel you, and he took the flour back.
Do you think that Google knows that Dhaya is cheap?
Yeah. I think they probably
I
do.
prefer to call it having thrifty sensibilities.
Mhm.
We have to wrap up soon,
Okay.
but with the time that we have, what would you tell regular consumers, regular people about data, and what would you tell other researchers about why it's important to understand the data economy?
So data has some dangers, and we've been hearing a lot about those, but data also does a lot of good. Data is the reason why we can get the goods that we want delivered to our door in a short period of time at a low cost. Data is the reason that we can shop quickly and find the purple shoelaces that we were looking for, within 5 seconds of entering them in a search browser. Years ago, before we had the data economy, we had to go shop from store to store to store. It could take you all afternoon to find something weird like purple shoelaces. And so that's saved us a lot of time. It's brought us a lot of efficiency. And I don't want to see us go back to this previous age where we had to go drive around looking for things because data didn't help match products with people who want them. So it's brought an enormous amount of efficiency and good. So as we regulate the harms, I hope we're really careful not to throw out the benefits as well.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to your fellow researchers about data?
It's tough to measure. We can't really take a ruler to it. We can't look inside companies' hard drives and count the zeros and ones or know how informative they are, even if we could. But we have to try. We can't just turn our heads away. We can't stick our head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend that this isn't part of the economy, because it's an incredibly valuable, incredibly important part of the modern economy.
Great. Thank you.
Do you give us permission to share this information with others?
Yes.
You click allow?
Allow.
I'll give you a discount.
Thank you.
That brings us to our wrap up. What's the one or two key takeaways that you want to leave us with today?
So in the long run, the data economy is not that different from a traditional economy. We'll grow and we'll get some boost from all this data, but we'll need to keep having innovations to sustain growth. But in the short run, it looks really different. We get these large firms that are really productive, but could have a lot of power over us and extract surplus from ways that maybe consumers don't like. We might get a lot of freebies too, because we'll exchange data for valuable goods and services that firms will give us because they want to see how much we laugh or how much of it we buy. And we'll have a different sort of exchange, different sort of prices. Valuation will be measured differently in the short run. And we're going to have to develop some new tools and some new regulations to adapt.
Thank you so much for being with us. We wish you really well with your research, as well as all of the toilet paper that you seem to have collected.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.